Welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And this week we return to our Video Nasties feature with Cannibal Holocaust from 1980.
Yeah, we are jet setting off to the Amazon rainforest to make a completely ethical and totally not exploitation documentary, aren't we?
Oh, yes. This will include absolutely us treating everyone with care and love and no absolute brutality and cruelty involved at all.
Yeah, no crimes against humanity.
Not at all. Is this your first watch of Cannibal
It
Holocaust?
is. It
Wow.
actually is. It's a film that I've heard about for a long time. It's a film that I've had in my list for quite a long time as well. And obviously, I know kind of the legacy of the film, some behind the scenes stuff like that. But it was actually the first time of watching it. And there's all sorts of thoughts that I had, especially going into it compared to what we actually got, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that I was surprised by. This is my first watch, and I've wanted to watch this film for a long time, but never done it. We've watched films that are almost around or similar or not as big as this one in terms of, say, video nasties.
Yeah,
This is one of the big ones. This is one of the ones that had one of the biggest like effects around it, a biggest concerns around the film, and possibly one of the ones that was most justified in why it was a bad film.
yeah,
So yeah, and the film itself was not at all what I was expecting structure-wise of the film. It was not what I
yeah.
was expecting. I was surprised by what came, and could already say that it was actually a far better made and structured film than I was ever expecting, including the little tidbit that this is technically would count as the first found footage film.
Well, one of them, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
one of the earliest examples, or at least many people point to it as the first proper like using that documentary style and using it as a proper storytelling technique kind of thing within a story, but not
Yeah,
fully because obviously parts of it are not found footage.
yeah.
Yeah,
It was really interesting, and I think I had some of the same thoughts that you did. I basically thought that the whole film was going to be the last, half an hour or so.
yeah,
And when it started, I was thinking, I'm not really sure how they're going to stretch this over like an hour and 45 minutes. It's either going to be really boring for an hour and, a half, and then shit's going to hit the fan. But I actually thought that it looked much better production wise than I expected. We spoke about Snuff a couple of weeks ago, and I think Snuff was it was in the 70s, like late 70s,
yeah,
but it was still relatively low budget, and I expected the actual film to look pretty poor, to be honest, but
yeah.
it looked pretty good in terms of production value, in terms of like costumes. I would like set design is a difficult one to mention because it was filmed in location in the Amazon.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a bit
Generally,
tricky.
I thought the film, the cinematography of the film,
Yeah,
was really beautiful. The opening, like jungle aerial views, although it's like really beautiful scenery and really beautifully shot. But the opening did kind of make me think of like a sweeping romance or a
oh
western
yeah, of course.
or something. The score at times is really nice, but it's kind of odd. The music sounds like something out of a much sweeter film than what's happening.
Yeah,
It
and we
like
spoke
brings
about
in
that on
sweet,
other
doesn't it?
films. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
it
like an
brings in that
acoustic
sweet
number.
music, and you're like, people are getting mutilated on the screen, and this
Yeah,
is like what you'd imagine two people like finally embracing each other, that first sweet
yeah,
kiss. And instead, it's that first bludgeoning to the skull.
yeah, and it is. It's a very like Italian thing. We spoke about it in some other, other episodes that we've done. They just do very interesting soundtracks. Like whether it's Goblin just going fucking mental in an Argento film, or whether it is like an acoustic guitar over like a woman being forced to give birth, or have the child ripped out of them. It's a fucking weird juxtaposition that the
Yeah.
Italians seem to love doing.
This one definitely, I think, in terms of filmmaking though, like, because obviously we've talked about giallo kind of stylings and stuff like that before,
Yeah,
but I think this one feels, for the most part, feels the most actually like linear, most straightforward. It
yeah,
feels like it feels like a standard, more style of filmmaking. If anything, from 1980, I'd almost say the style of this was actually a little bit ahead of its time. It kind of invented stuff that you've seen since in a lot of other films and styles that they do it. I think the structure of this film is really interesting because I mean, one, if I was to be told, oh yeah, you're going to watch what is like an early found footage film, then I'd be like, well, that's going to be really, really shit, then, isn't
it's gonna be dog shit.
it? Because I've said before, I'm not a big fan of that style, and but I really like the way this film is shot. It's doc style, and considering I'm not that keen on them, I think the use of the actual documentary. But one thing that these films always fall down is they normally decide to bring in like a really shitty looking footage or
Yeah,
really shaky cam to make it look like a quick style. But this one it actually looks like an actual documentary, which
yeah,
is where I always feel like a lot of these found footage ones fall down, is where they're like, oh no, we've got to make it real crazy, real madness, like so that it can work star wise, or we've got to really gritty up that screen so it looks like it's filmed on a really cheapy, shitty camera. And I know these guys are like meant to be actual filmmakers out in the world, but it is still film cameras and stuff like that they've been
yeah.
using.
I think it's an interesting setup as well that these four like American. I think they're supposed to be American in the
Yeah, I think
film,
so.
even though two of them are Italian, I believe. They talk about this American film crew who were going to contact these, cannibal tribes in the Amazon. And I like that they keep mentioning the Green Inferno, and that's the name that they were making because obviously Eli Roth was a massively influenced by this wave of films and this film in particular,
Yeah.
and made the Green Inferno. So I kind of watched it and was like, oh, he actually got the name from it.
Yeah, I've never watched Green Inferno.
I've watched it a couple of times. It's fun. It's good, man.
Is it?
It's full on, and it's kind of it is a throwback to these kind of films. And I found it like a real interesting story underneath that I wasn't expecting about this man going in to find the crew. And there's quite a bit of foreboding about like they talk about these cannibal tribes, but then there's also things that seem to be like out of place. And because obviously it's a tribe that you can't really have much contact with, you're just wondering like what's happened. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of foreboding about what happened to this crew, and why did this just happen?
Yeah, it takes a that's the part I wasn't expecting in a film called
Cannibal.
Cannibal Holocaust. Um, I was expected, like we said, about it just being them going in and we're following them for a forest, and then you get some, kind of deaths and things like that.
Yeah,
But this, the TV executive, whatever, going to search for the lost filmmakers
yeah,
with his crew, and that added this really interesting kind of more like of a very timely. It was kind of a apocalypse now or out of
yeah,
Africa. This kind of people going into nature to try and find something, and you're kind of delved into that, and it felt like it took a much more kind of dramatic kind of that time storytelling, brought it to this, and I really think it actually really improved the structure and
yeah,
storytelling of this film, because you've got the foreboding of him going in to find them, like, are you going to end up with the same fate? Because we've already kind of got the idea that it's not gone their way. They already believe that they're probably dead anyway.
yeah,
That adds something to it. You then allow it to have a mystery of what actually happened to them. And the fact that they restrain themselves to hold that until nearly the last half an hour of the film, really,
yeah.
I just felt like this film is really held back when one Italian horror doesn't tend to do
It
that
doesn't tend to,
often.
does it?
No,
No, it's
you
usually
know.
quite full on. Like,
And it makes this rise above like all the controversy, I think, buried this down to be a kind of uh, you know, a really kind of maybe like looked upon like poorly.
yeah,
But I actually think that if it wasn't for all that controversy, this could have been seen as one of the greater higher up kind of ones, because it has got a very classic dramatic film kind of structure to it.
And it's got some interesting themes to it. But touching on what you were saying about the actual kind of structure of what you'd expect, so I'm going to butcher the name, but Ruggero Deodato and Gianfranco Clarisi, so the director and the writer, they also did a film together. I don't know if you recognise the name, but it was the house on the edge of the park. And I remember I sent it to you because the poster I found is really cool, where it's like a skeleton with a switchblade or like a straight razor stood, by like this like house, and it's like really arty. And I said like filmmakers will make posters like this, and then it'll just be David Hess raping someone, and that's basically what the house at the edge of the park is. David Hess plays another fucking lunatic like he does in Last House on the Left, and he goes into this rich person's house and he subjects them to torture. So it's kind of like they made a film together before this that was very boot and braces, just fuck people up, and then they made this film which does have like quite a lot of restraint to it, does have some strange foreboding, does have a real decent story. It has an interesting, quite an iffy message at times that they're trying to get across, but it does actually have a lot more of a clear message. And there was one line of dialogue or like one scene later into the film that I did actually think was real good. But I feel, to kind of get into the opening of it, we get, this documentary team that have disappeared, and we get like this local militia who capture one of the Yakuma, I think they're called. There's a split second where one of the head gets fucking exploded, which is awesome. And they use him as like a it's like a way to get into the tribe. But there's also some scenes kind of like on the way to finding this Yakuma tribe, which is really like distressing. Like, I don't know if you knew about the animal deaths in the film. I imagine you did.
Yes, I've got
Yeah.
that is one of the things that does kind of bring a kind of a negativity to this film. The animal cruelty part is quite bad in this film.
It's horrendous, man. Yeah.
That is, for some people, this will make it a almost a non-watch kind of thing for that
and it's
one
understandable.
reason. Yeah.
Like when like the muskrat,
The
like
muskrat.
when they like one of the actors, stabs it, and you're watching and you're like, fuck, this is really rough, man.
I was gonna say, in the one I watched, the knife goes towards it as it's actually a possum, well, a muskrat apparently. So they call it a muskrat, but it's actually a possum. But you hear the animal scream, which is the actual animal. It's not some fake thing. But in mine, it did cut off on that one. It's the only one it cut off on my version for some reason.
Mine didn't, man. I wish it cut off. I fucking watched him die.
I was gonna say every other animal it shows you in this one, but for some reason the muskrat on my version I was watching, it cuts that one bit off, which is horrific to see. The one, the one that comes a little bit later. I don't know. I don't know. I will come back to them because most of them happen with the film crew later.
Yeah,
so we'll mention that in its order later on. But there are some horrific ones later on. And it's really hard. Like I remember at the start of this film, the only thing I found quite distracting was that because at the beginning we do also get like little scenes of the camera crew like getting ready, and we see a little bit of the footage before the guy heads off. And the only one I found a bit distracting was the fact that these camera crew are trying to act naturally, like they're actual people being documentary. And they just seem like the most unnatural people in the world, like the way they're acting, which is weird. At the start of the film, I thought, like, that's the only thing that's distracted me, is the fact that they just seem so not like documentary filmmakers. They seem so off. They seem so... But by the end, it actually kind of makes sense that these people seem a bit unhinged.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it kind of works later on. But when they do go into the forest and stuff like that, I gotta be honest, my head just went to Arnold and Carl Weathers. I was half expecting with the
Yeah,
miniature. I was just expecting them to show up with their rippling muscles showing up.
and the Predator. Yeah. Oh no, I've accidentally put Predator on again.
But yeah, you're right. The brutality of that, like that murder, um, the different animals that do come. We see the other really hard bit that comes like as they're going through is that rape and brutalization of the
Yeah,
woman.
the
Which,
adulteress,
yeah,
like maybe adulteress.
yeah, that's from their tribe, which is odd because this woman is definitely because she's covered in mud, but unlike all the other actors, this is like a white blonde woman.
It looks
You
like a white blonde woman,
you
doesn't
can
it?
see her blonde hair in like several of the parts. It's she's not like she's definitely not actually of their tribe.
Yeah.
Like
No,
it's weird because they've got so many actors, native actors, within the
which is
film.
really interesting, isn't
And
it?
for this one scene, they've hired. So I don't know if it's because they need to hire a proper actress in order to do what they were doing to her in this scene. They need to
Probably,
get
yeah.
someone different, but it's a really hard. You see her getting dragged out of the boat
Yeah.
across the ground, and then you see him like raping her with with
Like
a
a massive
a wooden
rock or
spear
something.
kind of rock
Oh, yeah,
kind
the
of
wooden
thing.
spear. I thought it was a rock.
Yeah, I couldn't tell because I think it looked like it had a hole in it. So basically, like he sticks his dick in the wood, and then
Ah,
he
yeah.
rapes her with the
Then he
and
goes
it's
for it. Yeah.
and you can
A
see the
rough
blood
watch.
building up around, and then he makes this like spiky bowl of mud, and then shoves it inside, and it's like fucking
It's
hell.
fucking rough, isn't it?
Yeah, as
And
he
it's
like yeah, you go.
yeah, yeah. No, it's just a real rough watch, you know, because it's one of those things where it's obviously it's gratuitous what it's showing, and it is very like it's very visceral, and it's very violent, but it does that bit where it's like you're not seeing like uh, you're not seeing like much, you know, but you're hearing a lot,
Yeah.
you know. So that kind of it's that thing of like it lets your imagination really run with it, and it is a real rough watch. Like watching it, I was like, oh, man, how long
Well,
was
it is
this?
hard because you do
Yeah,
hear a lot, but you do see most of it
you
as
do
well.
you do see, but it's like quick shots, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
So it never lingers too long that you're like, oh, this is clearly like fake, you know.
yeah.
It never
And
sticks around.
and obviously, as I was watching it, knowing about some of the stuff with this film in terms of like video nasties, and
Yeah,
we've touched on the animal cruelty, and we'll touch on that more, and we'll get to a lot of the video stuff, nasty stuff, like toward after we've talked about through the film a bit. But
yeah,
you know, one of the key things within it was, within the banning was the case made against it of it being real.
yeah,
That this was a snuff film. And I gotta be honest, this bit really did like I was looking at it going, I can see exactly how someone could think this was real. You
yeah,
know, we have a lot of things with special effects and stuff like that, but all of this just seems like it's happening. And the bit
yeah,
that really got to me is when he's dragging, when after he's bludgeoned her. That's the only bit I think that gives away that it's not, is that the blood doesn't quite look right.
yeah,
Um, Apart from that bludgeoning bit, though, the rest of the blood all mixed with the mud makes it look real.
yeah,
Um, the only bit that was like, I can see how this looks real is when he's dragging her lifeless body off, because her body like folds it, and the way he's
yeah,
dragging her across the ground, you're just thinking, whichever actress they paid to do this, fucking hell, you got put through the ringer. Like
yeah,
you must
yeah,
really have been, because like her arms and legs are tied, and when he drags her back to the boat, he's dragging her where her arms are together, and her body's just bumping in
it's just
hitting
limp.
against rocks and stuff, and it looks limp and lifeless. And I just looked at it going, that legitimately, I would truly believe that looks like a dead person. Like
Yeah,
part of me in my head is still thinking like I'm not sure I believe them. I
yeah.
think that woman's dead.
Well, there's a couple of things like that, you know. There are, I'll be honest, even though it's a film during the 80s, and you have that thing of like, oh, somebody's head got cut off, and you can clearly see that it's like plastic, like a, you know,
Yeah.
like a mannequin body. There's not much of this film that actually has that in, to be honest. You know, I think
No,
a lot
this
of it does look
looks
real.
creepily, scarily real for the time, I
Yeah,
think. I think the special
Yeah,
effects on this, there are people even today who could learn lessons. If they did
yeah,
it in that way, then go and find out how they did it, because you're still screwing it when you've got a perfection of like, if I compare this to all the other Italian horror, if we look at like Burial Ground or something like that, or
yeah,
New York Ripper, something like that, this looks truly quite real. And I think it is
yeah.
because I think maybe the colors, the fact that a lot of it is all covered with like mud and stuff like that might help to
Maybe.
hide a lot of it.
Yeah,
And it's all about the shots that they take, and maybe sometimes the found footage element, the documentary style, kind of helps to hide certain things. But it just looked like, I do think the special effects in this film are actually incredible. They're like better
yeah.
than most of that era that I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, they were awesome, man.
I
You know.
understand why, why the documentary were put on murder charges
Yeah,
for this
yeah,
film, because and had to prove for the special effects, which again
yeah,
we'll come back to. Let's um return to the to finding what happened to the documentary crew, and I'll
yeah.
start with Boy Hangs Dong.
Yes, I find it. I find it real fucking funny that he's just like, because he does that classic thing of like a documentary maker where he's like reading into a tape recorder, and he's like,
Yeah,
to ingratiate myself with the Akuma people, I decided I would strip naked as Adam and wait upon the water for them. And he's just like gets his fucking dong out
yeah, he's like
and goes into the water.
wrestling with the native. Well, actually, to be fair, I was talking about. There's the other boy that hangs dong as well to get them into the tribe.
Oh
He has to
yeah,
hang dong and
Miguel,
like
yeah.
stand there and kind of like not move while they fire darts around his
Oh
feet.
that,
Yeah,
yeah.
Miguel, him.
He hangs dong as well, Miguel.
He's the first
He's the
dong of
first
many
dong.
dongs.
There are a few dogs, aren't there?
But yeah, but that's pretty much it. They get to agree. They get taken into the tribe because he's shown himself, and he managed to make them trust the two
No,
non-native
yeah,
kind of
Kuma.
people. And
Yeah,
yeah, and then we get loads of those weird scenes where they're trying to like get them brought in and stuff like that. But yeah, that naked wrestling kind of in the water, like, this is how we get into the tribe. I must take their women, and even though they already seem to have a problem with adultery and
yeah.
other men going near their women, they're fine with one bunch of women going in. Like, I was like,
Going to the white man as well. You
yeah,
know.
it's like if David Attenborough did the documentary. I will now make deep penetrative love to this woman.
Yeah, I will now impregnate all of the women in this tribe.
And then he like runs off, and you can tell like he puts back on his trousers, but at the same time you can see that he's like, now I go to make fuck in this orgy
Yeah,
of loving.
now I get to fuck all of these women. Nice, you know.
Instead,
I
he's
love
greeted
that.
by the dead corpses of the documentary film crew.
Yes. Well, before that, I mean, I know we jump around a lot, but when they get to the actual tribe, and they see like the burning hut, you
Yeah,
know, and the one guy, the kind of leader of the Akuma tribe, is like freaking out, and it's really interesting because he's obviously like I said earlier, they can't communicate in English, so they can't be like, your lads came here and forced us in here and burnt it down. But it's very clear that like something is going on, and throughout the film, you're not only asking like what's happened to these people, but they're also asking like, why have these people been victimized? Because usually they say that like, and they always use like the term white man in this film, but they say like no white man has seen these two of these tribes,
yeah,
like they leave them alone. They make themselves scarce. They have like an internal war between themselves, but other than that, they don't go missing. They don't really touch them. But something must have happened for them to, meet such a grisly end. And then after that, when he starts to go deeper into into the Amazon, that's when I think he's trying to find a different. That's when, because there's the Yakuma, then there's the swamp people and the tree people,
yeah.
and they're the ones who are like always gobbling each other up, and they're kind of allowed to. And
Yeah,
I think,
the ones that were seem to be the worst put upon are the ones that actually don't do much to the others. You know, they have certain tribal rituals, but it is
Yeah,
more of like the swamp ones are the truly like horrific, brutal ones, really, aren't
yeah,
they?
yeah. Those
The
ones,
ones they don't want coming for them
Yeah. Um, but
because they
then,
save them, don't they? They save them from one of the at one point. They save the tree
yeah,
people from the
from the
swamp people or whatever
swamp
they are.
people, the
Yeah,
Yanomamo, the tree people, and the Shamatari are the swamp people. I mean,
yeah.
I'm just going to call them the tree people and the swamp people because I know I'll get those names confused.
Yeah.
Um,
But the
but
tree and the swamp are a bit more towards a little bit closer to
well,
the cannibalistic
they
one.
say that they say that there's like open season between them. Anyone could be hunted and killed and then strand. It's just like completely fine. But it's the Yamamamo, the tree people, who lead him to the shrine that they have of the. It's a really weird kind of like bundle of the skeleton and the corpses, and then the cameras in there,
Yeah,
and
and
it's
it's all been
really
taken to
interesting.
parts, and you've got some of the film reels, but not all of them.
Yeah,
As they find out that the tree people have them kind of lauded and laid out
yeah,
across there. Um, but this is what makes it really interesting because they really seem to have thought about it. They've kind of built this kind of proper, they've really thought about these different tribes and how they interact and what they do with each other and the different ways and
yeah,
the different cultures. And because we get to learn more in this first part, it also makes the next part more interesting and helps you kind of see back now. Like you just said, this film would have a is worthy of a second watch because you'll probably see more stuff you were like, shit, that's what the filmmakers did, and that's why that's more
yeah,
like that. Like you said with the burning, there's a lot of things that you're like, now I understand why that character is laid out on the floor or trying to heal that other person, what happened to
yeah,
them. Or why that person is like, why are they like on the ground of this stick on the ground where there
yeah,
seems to be a dead body of an animal? And it's like,
yeah,
why are they perched over it? Like, you understand once you get to the end of this film, which again
yeah,
is always the good inkling of a pretty great film
yeah,
when the seeds are laid, but you don't find out until the end, kind of thing,
yeah,
how it occurred. Which again, this was, as I assume you as well, going into it thinking we were just going to get basically what happened to the crew, and then
yeah,
gobbled up basically at the end, and it kind of being your standard like, oh, there they are, like Zombie 2 or
yeah.
that kind of style.
Just just them getting gobbled up.
Yeah,
That's
just
what I
kind of
expect.
surviving these weird looking zombie creature, like not zombie creature, but you know what I mean, like these
Yeah,
weird tribal looking people. But
yeah,
these guys at times are more terrifying than any zombie, when you see
yeah,
the way they are, when you think of them as they're actual humans, and you know that these cultures are in somewhat, they're not fictional, they are real. It's
yeah.
like, have a
Because
little
there
trip
are,
down to the rainforest.
there are still like cannibal tribes, but it's weird that they, I don't know how if they researched cannibal tribes much, or if they literally just went, "This would be cool." But they have like some interesting stuff that kind of you could, you could understand. They talk about believing that because he uses the tape recorder to, you know,
Yeah,
to kind of show them, and they think that he can capture people's voices, and then they think that the documentary crew were capturing their souls, and that the reels or the silver discs or the silver boxes as they call them were what were giving him power. And it's a really interesting way in which, like, you can imagine as somebody who is, like, for lack of a better word, primitive.
yeah,
They always say that in the film, that they're like a primitive people. But for people who aren't maybe as technologically advanced and don't know all of this stuff and are still in like a tribal mindset, maybe that's what they would actually believe.
yeah. Well, I mean, literally, if you go back in time to cinema, the first ever one of the first ever things shown was the big screen where they showed a train coming towards
Yeah.
a group of people inside of like a little tent. And yeah, you know what I mean? And people literally jumped and ran out the way as if this was coming towards them. You know what I mean? That's just the way
Yeah.
it, like your mind boggles the first time you see certain things. You're like, what the fuck is
The
that?
mind does boggle,
You know what I mean? It's like the first time that in like around the 70s and 80s when someone made a microwave and they're like, fuck, I can do this in a minute.
Yeah, oh my
I
god, I
could
could eat
bake
like
my potato in 5 minutes instead of an hour. Jesus
yeah,
Christ, the world has changed.
I could have a TV dinner now, just as good as mum makes, like
It tastes exactly the same.
it's exactly the same.
Yeah, and because he has to eat like the bowel of what you assume
Someone,
is someone,
yeah,
in order to finally like for them to trust him basically and finally allow him to have the film reels in a trade for the does he
the
trade it for the yeah he trades it for the
voice
voice.
recorder.
They want to collect other people's souls
Yeah,
is basically what. But yeah, and yeah, that's all like really interesting. That's kind of like where it kind of cuts before it cuts back over to him back in the real world, I guess.
yeah,
His real world. But yeah, it's the fact that it's like you understand what he's doing and you understand what he has to do. And I can't remember what the character's name of the guy who's guiding him, but he basically looks at him like, basically, do this or they eat us. You know what
yeah.
I
It
mean? Like,
was Chaco,
yeah, it's just
because I know
uh
Miguel,
the badass.
the badass with the beard. He's just
Yeah,
like, yeah, just fucking scram that liver.
yeah. He enjoys watching the man wrestle with the naked ladies.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, it's really interesting, and then obviously that's when we start to get more of the peaks of the filmmakers because
yeah,
he has the film reels and now they're like we get a little bit more of like the TV executives who are like, oh, this is high priority. It made huge ratings, his other stuff.
yeah,
The previous documentary that he made was like a huge hit, but it was a hard watch. It was hard to see, but that's what people want. They want things that are hard to see. Like they're kind of
yeah.
pushing for the graphic nature of things. Um,
And it's
I
interesting
I
because
can't remember what the documentary was called, but
the Green Inferno.
no, the previous documentary. You get to see it on the
Oh,
screen.
the Last Road to Hell.
The Last Road to Hell,
Yeah,
yeah.
because it's
Which,
really interesting. Yeah, because they mention about like the main character anthropologist is now back. He's got the film reels and he's on like a news show talking about his journey. And then they say, we're going to be broadcasting the Green Inferno, Alan Yates's last documentary, live Wednesday at 9 p.m.
yeah,
And then they ask him to host it and then to talk about his journey, finding it and locating them. And so he says, rightfully, I want to see I want to see the footage before. And then I think that's where we find out. We watch The Last Road to Hell, like a bit of it. But then we find out that, Alan Yates and his crew aren't really the people that we've been led to believe.
yeah,
And kind of part of one of the keys, or one of the teases for the twist is that The Last Road to Hell was all staged.
yeah. That reveal of because obviously Last Road to Hell, and I believe that was another part that was quite cut down. Apparently, it was more brutal originally. The stuff that they
Mm.
showed, because that had to do stuff with like apartheid and stuff like that, and the separation,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So, but you see these, black men chained up to post and shot, and then the reveal that actually they had paid the militants to do that to them,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
like so that the documentary crew they paid to have people murdered, and you're like, what the
Yeah.
fuck? You're like, and she
Yeah.
just, it's the fact the executive just goes with it, like, yeah, that's kind of what happened. It's like, fucking hell, like it feels a little bit like they're trying to make a point that these people are ruthless for whatever they can get. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there is a real sense in this film that it literally is like the Western culture are the true monsters here. Like
Oh
we are
yeah,
the true
that's
sadists. We are sadistic in our like
yeah.
greed for what we want.
Yeah, that's definitely like, one of the messages that they try and push is, about it's also about, sensationalism, and that like that's basic what people want to watch
Yeah,
is horrendous, horrid stuff
and
and
that
be safe behind the
and that
TV
that
screen.
comes in later when it's the you do whatever you have to do, but don't stop filming. Keep filming no
Yeah.
matter what is happening, kind of thing. It pushes it to insane boundaries to show how kind of insanely sadistic that like they can be in that kind of need to get something.
And it's kind of mental because if you think about a lot of the stuff that happens like today,
Yeah,
does happen. Like if you
yeah,
go on TikTok, you can see all sorts of mental stuff, you know, or even if you just not even just TikTok itself, but if you go on Reddit or anything, you know, you can see like, you know, video footage of people just getting stabbed and or
yeah,
people
horrific
dying. And
stuff.
a
That
lot of it is taken by passerbys and you know by people who are just watching and
yeah.
filming it. You know,
Even before these things, you had stuff like, remember, like on YouTube when we were like in, when we were in school kind of thing. There used to always be things where people were like, "Oh yeah, look at this YouTube set," and it was something of someone being beheaded or something like that. And you were like, "What
yeah,
the fuck you? Why the fuck are you showing this to me? Like, what the fuck is going on? Why do we think that that's okay?" But
yeah. Why
that
does my
is,
still developing brain need to see this? You know,
yeah. But it
it's not
just
going to be psychologically scarring at all.
like like a horror film, there is a certain level of you that's like intrigued by the idea of death or how someone died, and things like that. We've all had those nights where we've been just scrolling on Google and ended up looking for like a million different ways that people were murdered or murder
Yeah,
cases and freaking yourself out about someone's about to come in and take your take you away from this and murder you
yeah,
like the Ramses or something like that.
yeah,
But yeah, there is also a I guess it also shows that there has to be a line drawn in that we shouldn't sensationalize this kind of crap. But
yeah,
it's an interesting part of the film, um, and yeah, that's when we start to get way more about the filmmakers and realizing what they're like, as in well, they're mainly pretty unlikable for
yeah,
the most
definitely.
part. They seem kind of like idiots without any morals. They
Yeah,
don't seem to care, and as things start to happen to them, but even from the beginning, we see the first couple of shots like them in the hotel room, and they're basically just like, you know, the woman naked,
yeah.
and they're just not filming, and she's asking them to stop, and they're just like they're kids. They act like stupid teenagers,
Just like
basically.
fooling around, you know.
Yeah, non-stop, and they do throughout. As we're guided through, as they start to make their way into the rainforest, it just gets more and more like, what the fuck? Like, why do you act like that? Why are you acting like that? Like,
Yeah,
constantly filming, wasting reels quite often. And she continues to mention about the fact that they're just wasting film,
yeah,
basically. But they're just like, no, we have to get all of it. Because they have their guides, don't they?
yeah. Uh, what's
And
his
he
name?
I was going to say, I remember because it's one of the first dead bodies you see in the earlier part when he's hunting for them. You see this
Yeah,
this dead body, and um,
I think I've got it in my notes. Felipe.
Felipe.
Yeah,
I mean, this this all comes within that. This is probably the key part to mention about the animal cruelty, because this is like the key
this is
section
where a
where we
lot of it
see
starts to
most
happen.
of the cruelty one after another, and
Yeah,
also why it's so like needlessly unneeded.
yeah.
Um, Needlessly unneeded.
Needlessly unneeded. Yeah,
Yep, that's kind of the opposite of that word. But yeah, it is pointless what they show. One of the biggest reasons, obviously, for the banning of this film. And in this sequence, we get to see as they're going through the rainforest, we get quite a few that are just kind of quick shots of like things that they're coming upon.
yeah,
Obviously, as mentioned before, we had the possum or mistaken muskrat in the film that was killed with the knife,
yeah.
which you got to see the whole of that. I just got to hear the
Oh,
scream and the knife going towards. I didn't see that bit, and not that
so
I
brutal.
I, I won't be going to look for that because I don't need to
Yeah,
see.
yeah. I wouldn't
Um,
recommend it.
but you know, this was a big part of it. Didato has obviously since he said like that this was stupid to do it the way that they did it, which was actually getting the animals and murdering themselves. Uh,
Yeah,
if you haven't if you've seen the film or haven't watched, you might not have realized with some of them, because you might have just assumed, well, they just use fake props and stuff like that. These aren't real. They've just added sound.
yeah,
But every animal that is murdered in this film is a real animal that they have murdered on screen.
yeah. And it's fucking rough, isn't it? You know, and it does. It feels like needlessly. You know, it's needlessly included. I was gonna fall into your trap of saying needlessly.
Yeah.
Um, But you find just like I get there's a scene that actually I think does this kind of a bit better than this scene, and it's a little bit before, but we get the main character, the anthropologist, interviewing the family members and of all of the people who went missing, and basically
Yeah,
all of them are like, you know, they're all bellends, for lack of a better
yeah,
word. I was married to one of them for 4 months, and then he was always away at working, and he was always like shagging around, and he was horrible. And one's like, oh, I hate my son, I don't want to talk to him. He's dead. That's probably the best thing that's happened.
yeah.
One's like, oh, her name's not even Faye. Her name's Tina. She's an actress. Like, she was never any good. She was horrid. You find out they're all cunts, basically.
Basically, yeah,
So it feels like very like unnecessary that we then have a footage of them. And I get it. You're like they're in they're animals and they're trying to survive, but you just see
yeah.
them like fucking lop a turtle's head off, and then
That was the worst one to me because it's you know, I know that they're trying to build a reality. And yes,
yeah,
if you have it, it builds a realism. If it looks like a really fake animal, it can ruin the part of it.
yeah,
And I think there's even been people come out in defense of it, saying, they've killed people in other films, like I mentioned Apocalypse Now before that features some real animal deaths and stuff like that in it.
yeah,
And the BB and talking of the video Nasties part, like the BBFC said, you can have them still in it as long as it's like clean kills. You can still have
yeah.
animal death as long as it's what they would refer to as a clean, quick kill,
Fucking hell.
like in Apocalypse Now, which is like a
Yeah,
clean. And that's where they've defended, saying like, oh, they're being really harsh because of the type of film it is, but they shouldn't. Nothing about that turtle scene is a clean, quick kill. I don't think anyone can say that turtle didn't suffer when it died. It was suffering before they even lopped its head off. They're like dragging it out by one of its like legs and tail.
yeah.
They're kind of tapping and knocking it. It looks really uncomfortable. It's moving its
Just
limbs like it's
breaking.
in, you know what I mean? And
But
then
even after they kill it, its legs are flapping about and its head like jerks.
yeah, its head's still moving even when its head's off, which I know is convulsive, but its legs and stuff is still moving. And it's just the fact
Yeah,
you see the whole thing. They take it apart, they're ripping the shell, its organs, and again, its limbs are still moving even when they've torn its shell off and lipping into its
oh,
organs.
yeah.
And it's one that you never want to see, especially with I guess it's also because it's unusual because you don't tend to see this of a turtle, whereas I guess in many native countries and in Asian countries this might be common practice, but
Might be
for us
common.
this is
It's
not
not.
common at all. This is fucking weird to see a turtle like a beautiful
Just
creature just being mindlessly
yeah,
torn apart.
yeah.
Um but
Let
I
them
just
get
think,
strangled on straws,
yeah.
plastic. Let them die as nature intended, not by, being beheaded and
Yeah,
brutalized.
I just thought, and that one is to show whatever that they're having food, and it's meant to show the realism of being in the rainforest that you've got to survive or whatever. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's all fine. But half of them are just for like quick shots of, oh no, there's a tarantula on me, or oh, a boa constrictor. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
it's just chopping a tarantula in half just because. Well, oh, we wanted a scene of her being possibly Faye, being possibly at risk, you know,
yeah. Like the
or
tarantula gets fucking mushed, and the snake just gets fucking killed for
butchered,
no reason.
like chopped into several bits. Again,
Yeah,
not clean because he's chopped into several parts. You
yeah,
know what I mean? It's not like a quick death.
yeah,
Um, and that includes how they're treated before as well. And we don't even know off screen how they were treated to get to that moment. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So it's not like these animals didn't go through a long process before they finally got the shot they wanted. Even with like the squirrel monkeys later on, they actually killed two squirrel monkeys, not one, because they didn't get the right shots. They had to kill another one.
which is
And that's just
that's
fucking,
a brutal one as well.
yeah, lops his fucking face straight off.
Yeah, cracks his fucking dome open. You see
And
his
their
brain.
defense was like the animals didn't go to waste. The local natives ate them because squirrel brain, like monkey brains, is a delicacy. But still, it's like, well, yeah, but fucking, but you didn't need to do it, did you?
Yeah,
Like,
you didn't need to. you know.
And it doesn't show enough. Like the fucking tarantula one for starters. How fucking easy would that be to fake that's no one's going to question if that's real or
No.
not. You get a fucking furry twig.
Yeah, if you just get one of those joke ones you get, you know.
It just, yeah, I think that this is the one. This is the one out of everything that I definitely go like. I get why people shouldn't have to see that, and if they do realize it's real, it's not real, and it is the one thing in this film that leaves a kind of bad taste.
Yeah, definitely. It's
Um,
real harsh. I thought the muskrat was the worst, man. Oh, it was fucking
as I
horrid.
said, all I heard was a scream, which was bad enough.
Yeah, you're
Uh,
lucky you didn't watch it. Let's just say that.
but that's what I mean. You shouldn't leave a film. You shouldn't leave a film with a scene that is literally, you know, left an impact in that negative way on you.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I know it's all about realism. And yes, you could say that, to bring reality, some things they need to like show off and make you feel like this. And this might in turn make more people have believed that the real deaths were real if everything
yeah.
looks so realistic.
Maybe,
But
yeah. Maybe
it's
that was
still
part
not,
of a good choice. You
but it's
know.
still not worth a life just for
No,
their shot. You know what I mean? It's putting them
yeah,
above it. And I know Dedato has gone back on it and saying he was an idiot to do it the way he was back then, but it still doesn't quite still
yeah.
not quite good enough.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? You know.
Um and of
I,
course I guess the one thing it does out is it makes you dislike the filmmakers even more. But
yeah,
not
I
more than
guess
what
that
they
does.
go on to do next.
Yeah, I guess that does one work. I mean, Felipe's death is real. I
Yeah.
thought was actually really funny. So he gets bitten by a snake. Felipe is the guide.
Yeah.
He gets bitten, and then they're like, "Cut my leg off! Cut my leg off!" So they just like hack his leg off.
Without
And
fucking
then
not knowing what they're really doing, I don't think.
no, they just go for it, and then they like like sear the wound, and then in the next shot, it's literally just like Felipe is dead.
Yeah, that's what
The
and this is what I
abruptness of
mean,
it is
like
so funny.
this is why you kind of get the sense of like, are these guys fucking like psychopaths or something? Like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Because they're like,
Yeah,
one's just smoking, doesn't seem that bothered. The other one's still filming. Of course, he's still filming.
of
The
course.
other ones are kind of and then they go straight to like messing around, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, this guy just died for you, and you're just like, let's put some leaves on him, and off we go.
Yeah,
They don't
yeah.
even like properly bury him. They just put some
No,
leaves because we know they found his body later on and he was pretty much out in the open, just
yeah.
lying there.
I wonder whether it would have been really interesting if they'd have implied that, like, maybe if they get rid of the film, some of them killing the animals, and instead they'd have put in something like a scene in between where Felipe gets bit and they cut his leg off, and they're like carrying him, and he looks fine, and then they kind of imply that they killed him so that they could take a shot of him being like, oh, he died from the poison,
Yeah,
because they do that later on
that's
in
what I
some
mean. You do
fucking
get the
horror.
wonder, like it's like they do all of that and it's like he's dead. It like cuts straight to
Yeah,
he died. It's
he
like,
died.
did
Like,
what?
did he?
Did
Or
he
did
die?
yeah? Like
What the
maybe
hell
he did
happened?
just actually die off the snake bite, but I would have liked it if they were like, maybe his death was sped up by the filmmakers.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely didn't want to drag him around. So that's why I was wondering. I was like, what are you guys gonna do now? Because you ain't gonna be dragging him about. Um, yeah, it's really weird. Like they really are like the way that it is quite vile. The way that they continue to like fake and make up that like they really do show themselves as like the true monsters. The way that they're coming in
Yeah,
and kind of invading on this other culture. They have no care for them, and it's the fact they've run in and they're just like truly like you have that birthing scene, don't you, of the woman giving birth, holding on to the
yeah.
which again is quite a hard one to watch. She's giving
But I don't know if
birth.
she's giving birth. I don't know what is actually going on in that one
Well,
because
they
it.
take the dead corpse of the child out of her and
Yeah,
bury it, don't they? So
and
I
then
think
they kill.
I don't know if or if because the child or for some reason they know the child is dead that they are doing. But my thing is that it was like this is how they try to make her give birth. But if she fails,
Yeah,
like the baby is dead, um, I feel like they killed her because the baby died, and therefore she's an inferior. She's not a, she's not a
Maybe.
childbearing person, woman, and she doesn't,
Potentially, yeah.
I guess within these tribes, that is her role, to be that. You are to give us children. If you can't do that, then you are worthless to us, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because then they bludgeon her head to death. But you've got the filmmakers come in. I can't quite tell. I think it's Jack, the blonde one.
Yeah.
But I can't quite tell but he kind of goes over and he tries to push them in like he's trying to get them to do something. So that's why a little bit in my head I was like, what did they do? Like, did they interfere in this way, or like in that? It makes you question it in every turn. What did they
It's
do?
really weird, you know? It's a very, and there's a lot of that kind of in this film, I think, where you're a lot of it is left open to interpretation, like that scene. You do get the scene with the adulteress, where he's trying to explain some of the customs, but there's a lot of like non-verbal stuff that you do see, and it's you kind of watch it and you have to make your own kind of opinion about that. Because I was the same. I was watching it and I was like, okay, maybe she was an adulteress as well, and she was
Yeah,
pregnant, and then that's why they were doing it. And then the child was, I assume the child was stillborn, and I don't know. I was thinking maybe she's adulterous, but now you're saying you thought that it was that she's not, like, in the tribe's view, maybe able to like
yeah,
reproduce. So is that's an interesting concept with the film as well.
yeah.
There's some
That's why it's
vagueness.
which one is it? Yeah, and there's
Yeah,
multiple reasons why, and you don't know how much you can trust because you know that they fake the voiceovers as well.
yeah,
So it all depends on like which ones have already been edited. So even though we know that they're watching like raw footage, we know that some of it has already been played with because, for instance, they've put end of reel on the end of some of them, but some of them aren't,
yeah,
like they're raw. So that's why it's really hard to know which ones is the real and which ones is they've added the voiceover on already. Like he said,
yeah,
like some are silent because they haven't been able to do it yet. Some have already been added the sound onto it or the
yeah,
narrative onto it. So like that bit they say about it being kind of like they imply it's like a birthing
yeah,
Sarah or something like that. But you don't know if that's actually what happened or if they're filming something completely different. So it's really
yeah,
it's an interesting part of that kind of idea, and it really builds on once they get back to the village, like that sadistic nature of
yeah.
them
When they,
of them capturing like everything, nothing is held back,
yeah,
which then includes this fucking madness. Like they take it to another level when they get to that village. The torturing and the burning. It's like,
yeah,
what the fuck is going on? Like they want action-packed scenes. So
yeah,
they just start going around shooting everything and like in the air and gathering them all up, and they guide them inside of that hut, and
yeah.
and then like that was one thing. I was like, what the fuck are they doing? And then they start burning it, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and it's them creating like this narrative,
Yeah,
that they were attacked by this other tribe, so they can make this story. Um, and there's kind of two interesting bits about that. Is that so they obviously used a lot of real tribesmen for this film, and and the tribesmen would have gone. That was like real, They actually
yeah,
put the tribesmen in there, set it on fire, and then only let them out at the very last minute. So it's massively like endangering these people's lives. But I think looking at the idea of kind of like shaping the narrative, is that it was really inspired by like this media coverage of this Red Brigades, which was like this Marxist Leninist like armed guerrilla organization in Italy, and they were responsible for a lot of kind of violent things, but there was also a lot of like questions about, well, how much violence were they responsible for? Was the media sensationalizing them? Was it like creating narratives around what they'd done? That kind of stuff. And I think it's pretty clear that that message continues in this film. When you look at
yeah,
these, asshole direct, documentary makers who are just like, well, these people aren't really people. We can burn them in a hut and then say, oh, this is a massacre by this tribe, because we know it's got to be, it's got to make a story. It's something that I thought was a real good twist in the film. I was expecting it to be
Yeah,
very straight laced,
yeah, it really does add something to this film. It makes you, any film that makes you question pretty much everything that's going on around
Yeah,
you is a strong film. You know what I mean? Because it really shows that they've thought about it. And it has so many levels with these people. Like, that when they're show, like when they're raping that woman,
yeah, which is
and
after.
one after the it is after that bit, but one after
Yeah,
the other. But the fact is that they keep passing around the camera. Like,
yeah,
why you're not going to put that in the final footage because you
exactly.
wouldn't.
Yeah, of
But
course you would.
so why, Faye's there, like, why, what are you doing, and why are you wasting this footage? And then they even try to do stuff to Faye when she starts disagreeing with them, like
Yeah,
Jack tries to hold her down, and you are just there like, what the fuck is happening here?
yeah,
Like, you are going truly mad. I mean, yeah, that is a little bit after, because after they've burnt in Troy, and another bit of animal cruelty, the pig, you
he
know
just gets shotgunned.
again, and that pig's like fucking, they take that rifle and shoot it straight in the head, but that pig's like chased around and squealing like terrified before you shoot it in
Yeah,
the head. Again, not a clean kill, fucking
no,
violent.
yeah,
Um, Also, this hit contains one of the, I gotta say, one of the weirdest sex scenes after they've
yeah,
after they've pillaged the village. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Um, that is one of the weirdest fucking ones when it has, what is it, Faye and Alan,
yeah.
and
Just
they're
like
like,
bumping
she
and grinding.
seems like she's fighting him, like she doesn't want to do it, and then it's like, oh wait, no, are you play fighting? And then it's
Yeah,
like, oh wait, I'm not sure, but whatever's happening right now, does not feel natural in any way. You're like
yeah,
constantly pushing each other and pulling each other, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, this doesn't seem real in any way. It seems like, like, I don't understand this act that's
yeah.
happening right now.
But I think after that scene is where we go back to the main story, where the anthropologist is basically saying, we can't show this,
Yeah.
the TV executives are saying no, like, we're still going to show it. We haven't seen the rest of the footage, we don't really care, we're going to show it. And then there's like an interesting part where the anthropologist is talking to one of the TV executives, and he's saying about, like, have you thought of this from the Yakomo people's perspectives? Like, how would you feel if somebody came into your house, took whatever little bits of food you had, and threw it down the toilet? And they say, like, to the documentary crew, it might have just been a pig that they killed. But to them, it was food. It was their livelihood. They
Yeah.
might have just burnt a hut down, but to them that was their homes. So
Mm.
it's a really interesting way in which they're kind of getting in, humanizing the Yakomo, and asking that question again of, like, which one actually is the savages.
Yeah, I think that it is really interesting, that part of the film, because it is, you know by the end of it, you kind of just put the Yakomo down, especially the Yakomo ones who don't actually seem that, yes, they do some brutal rituals, but you just think of it as like, this is their kind of natural way that they've
That's the
believed
way.
in. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? That's their natural thing. Whereas the filmmakers know better. They
yeah,
know a different world. They understand the reason of society, and yet they feel like, oh, we're not in that society anymore, so we can
yeah,
play by whatever rule we want to do it in. And it's like, that's what truly makes someone, psychopathic, like
yeah,
sociopaths. You know what I mean? They think that it's their real, that these aren't real people. And when the Yakoma are actually quite welcoming to a certain point,
yeah,
you know what I mean? They're quite there. It's more of the, we'll just say, the tree and the swamp people. They're the ones that are a little bit more savage, and you can see it from their appearance,
yeah,
a bit more of the cannibals, but still, they're still nothing compared to the level that these filmmakers go to.
yeah. And
And
they
that
even
includes the
mentioned,
TV executives seeing footage, the
I'd
TV
be like, yeah,
executives
fuck.
seeing footage and still being like, yeah, no, we can still keep, this isn't done yet.
Yeah, we can keep
You know,
that.
yeah, that's fine.
Because
We'll just
after
edit it to look different.
because after that is when they say they're still going to do it. The anthropologist is like, I'm not doing it. I'm the only one, me and the editor, who have seen the final footage and seen what happens to them, and there is like no way that I'm being associated with it. And it's really interesting that the TV executive is like, it's a human. Not only is it like a science interest, but it's a human interest. And don't you want to be like involved in one of the most important like discoveries of the 20th century?
Yeah.
And then they go and they watch the rest of the film, and that's probably where the last 20 minutes, 15 minutes really starts to ramp up into the film that I expected us to get, which is, they have the real horrendous kind of rape of the tree people woman, which is rough again. But then after that, you get the impaling of her,
That
where
kind of iconic shot that I've seen
yeah,
several times without seeing the film.
which I think again looks real. It's a
Yeah.
real shocking thing. I expected that we'd see it, but to be honest, I'm kind of glad that we didn't, because it's fucking.
Well, because I thought because I'd seen it all over the place, I thought Faye was going to be that one because it was a thing. So I thought that was her. Yeah, and that was it. That was definitely one of the key deaths. That was mainly like, we don't see how this could not be real.
Yeah,
Through her, it's coming out of her mouth. How can that not be real?
yeah.
That was one of the ones that they had to prove, that we'll talk about a little bit at the end.
Yeah, but I think the worst thing for me, and the bit why I think it works so effectively that we don't see it, it would have been more shocking if we saw the act, but it's when they find her and they're filming her, and they say, the tree people have, take like, virginity very seriously. And it's the woman that they raped, and then they go to one of them and they're like, Mark, don't smirk, look
Yeah,
sad. And then it's the implication that actually it was the Americans that did this to the woman. They
yeah,
killed her, impaled her, and it's the narrative again, and it's like, what will these fucking sick people do to shape a narrative?
yeah.
And knowing that is kind of worse, I think.
Well, it's so, you see, I interpret it as, because they'd done that to her, the tribe had then, because the tribe watched. The
One of
tribe
the
were
tribe
watching.
members watched.
Yeah. So that's why I assumed it's the tribe was the one that actually impaled her, but they knew by raping her that the tribe would do something to her. You see
Yeah,
what I mean? Because based on the other stuff that they'd seen happen based on those things, the tribe had always reacted in a violent way, like with
yeah,
the bludgeoning of the pregnant woman. Or so, yeah. I don't know. I took it as, not they hadn't been the one to impale her. The tribe had done that, but they knew this was coming, which is why Mark's so ecstatic when he comes up to it, because it's like, it's better than I even thought it could be. You see what I
oh,
mean?
yeah. No, I thought
That's what
they
I was
did.
thinking,
I
because I
thought they
thought,
did it to the man.
yeah.
It was
I don't know.
heavily.
I don't know which way. I don't know which way around it was, but yeah, that was why I thought. Because when Mark walks up, he looks like he hasn't seen it before, so he's like ecstatic, like, "Oh
Yeah,
my god, they did this to her!" Like, that's why they raped her, because they knew, and they saw that someone was there. They knew the
yeah,
tribe guy was there, so that's why I was like, oh, they're ecstatic, because like, oh, this is better
they
than I
did
could
it.
have even imagined that they were going to do to
Yeah,
her, and that's why he's like, Mark, you can't, oh, sorry, Alan, is it Alan? You can't smile. Alan's the one that,
Alan. Yeah,
yeah, Alan, you can't smile, and then that is one of the best scenes, I thought, not just because of the iconic Paul bit, but because the turn where he goes from laughing to
yeah.
suddenly doing his serious documentary, the part that's going to
The
make the
documentary
edit.
phase.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah. It's
he's
fucking.
like, oh, the horrific things that they do. Whichever way it was done, it was still like, it's still such an impressive
The
scene.
masterstroke, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
But see, I thought
that
that
is,
they
this is
did
like
it.
the best part of the film. It really is. This kind of, this turn, this
Yeah,
switch of character.
it's real good, man. Because then that's when after I was under the impression that the tribe then come for revenge, and start to hunt them down for doing this.
But
because it effectively,
isn't it the different tribe? It's not the Yakuma, is it? It's like the swamp or the tree people that are the ones that
yeah.
then chase them, isn't it?
But it's a tree person woman that they raped.
Oh, was it? I thought it was one of
Yeah,
the Yakuma ones.
no, it's the tree people.
Right.
Which is why I thought, oh shit, they come for revenge because it's very clear that they killed them for a reason, whereas they
Yeah.
didn't kill the anthropologist. You know,
I just thought in general they were just doing such massive amount of shit anyway
maybe.
that they were going to just come. They would have come in for the men, and they also because they kind of because Jack is the first one to go,
Yeah,
and Jack is
which
he's kind of like it's like they're trying to rile them up anyway,
yeah,
like because he goes on top of that thing and he's trying to you get them, and obviously that's when they seem to get agitated by the acts that he's doing that he's showing off.
then he's
And
shooting
then,
at them.
yeah,
You know?
shoot. That's what I mean. So I feel like that's enough to rile them up to make them want to attack anyway. And then obviously you get the impalement, well, nearly of Faye, but then they look over and are like, oh shit, there's one through Jack.
Yeah, and that's great because Jack
And it
gets impaled.
and it takes it to another level because they don't put the camera down. They don't go, oh shit, we've got to go and help Jack. They go, Alan goes, well, he's done for anyway, so grabs the rifle, and Faye's like, you can't fucking shoot him, he's still alive. It's like,
Yeah,
nah.
and
I'll
just
finish
fucking
him off, and then they'll finish him even more.
yeah, we'll film it. Mental, so fucking insane that you
And it
just do that
is.
to like your mate,
You see Jack then get grabbed by them. You get Dick chop off.
which looks real. Oh,
Yeah, again,
bother.
it looks the straight off lopping off. It
Yeah,
looks real, lopping that dick off.
and then that's it because they lop his fucking todger off, and then it like swaps like jumps almost to them like his body on the ground,
And
and then you see his
pulverizing.
head. Yeah, you see his head, and then it's like his head's kind of looks quite real, and then the body also looks quite real.
It does, yeah. Like the one I thought looked really quite real was oddly was the his head when it's on the ground, but the
Yeah,
skin off his face is gone.
yeah, yeah,
And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, that looks better than any like fake head,
yeah,
skinless bone, like, whatever, like head I've ever seen. Like literally, that was more brutal than any like zombie styling of it. That was like
yeah.
fucking hell.
It was
And
mental.
I know he might possibly be already probably dead by that point, but still, I was like, fucking hell, you're pulverized down, then they tear the
Yeah,
meat off, and then they take all the meat,
and
and then
then they
they
just
take it off the
spread it.
face. It's like
Yeah,
fucking hell, like seriously, the effects are superb, and I understand why people thought this was real, because
yeah, of
that
course.
looked like I like don't know how they pulled some of these shots off. You know,
Yeah,
um, it's a hard one to watch, but it's also impressive. And I'm not surprised the director was charged for murder.
yeah. Oh, mate. It's fucking mental.
Yeah, having to prove that these aren't real. And it's because this is like the last bit, but one bit I found really interesting is that kind of the TV executive side of the story, where they're all just sat
Yeah,
in that room,
just
like it's
watch.
any other TV show or blockbuster film that they're like trying to decide on what to do with it editing wise, and that kind of they're revealing the reels, and so much messed up shit happens. There's
Yeah,
rapings, there's murders. The crew are clearly doing horrific things, and they're still sat there like, yeah, no,
yeah,
this is still okay. This is all
yeah,
right. We can keep both of that. Seeing both sides of this, and they're like, yeah, And it's not until the very like last bits when they're finally like, nah, we should probably burn this.
yeah. Wow, and it's interesting because it's as soon as it starts to happen to the people that they're like, no, this is too far.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, obviously you can't. I mean, you couldn't show any of it, and I'm not like, yeah, you could definitely show, people being brutalized, but the execs are like, oh, as soon as it's like, are people being murdered? No, like
nah,
you
we're
could
done.
shoot, yeah, you could shoot a native and kill their food and burn the house down, but nah, don't show somebody being killed.
Yeah,
Don't show a white man being killed.
I feel like it's all that, yeah, because it's all that stuff like it's like, yeah, oh, they raped someone. But we can cut around that.
Yeah, we can get rid of that. We can edit that out.
That's fine.
I
Yeah,
think it's so after Jack dies, you then get and Alan shoots him. You then get also like another mental part where it cuts and they're like absolutely exhausted. They've been surrounded and they're still trying to escape. And then Faye gets captured
Yeah.
by them, and Alan is like, we have to save her. Like Alan now says we have to save her, but Mark is like, no, we just keep filming. Like this
Yeah.
is what we do. We just keep filming. And then obviously she gets fucking, you know, horrendously killed, gang raped, all sorts. It's a rough watch,
Yeah,
man. Last
she
like
she gets
15, 20.
raped and thing, and I think they might use that. I think you can see that they use that same bloody rock or wood or whatever that they impaled that woman earlier.
Yeah,
If she gets that, and then she
and
gets
they rip
literally
her
like
head off. Yeah,
they beat and beat and beat and beat her until then it's like just tear the head off, and it's like fucking hell.
yeah, it's brutal. And then
Yeah,
they finally just surround the documentary makers and just slice them to death. And you get the classic thing of like the camera drops and then the body drops down with the face in front of the camera.
yeah,
Which is an old school.
an old school one, but I guess one that they made.
But yeah, at
They
the
kind of,
time they were like, "Oh my god, this is sensational," and now you
but
see it and you're like, "Of course
it's
it's going."
it's the same thing. It's not until those very last few shots that it gets all like majorly kind of a bit more shaky or a bit more thrown
Yeah,
off. But it's only in the final few minutes. You know, they don't ruin the look and impact of the film by doing it too early. They save it just for those final couple of shots
yeah,
where it looks really shaky. Apart from that, it's still mainly shot quite well, I guess, because Mark is like, we have to keep filming it nicely. We have to keep
yeah,
going. But yeah, right down to however the fuck he dies. We don't know that one.
yeah,
But yeah, we just have that bludgeoned Alan at the end. And then,
which is
yeah, so they're like, we need to burn it. And that's it.
yeah,
And then, yeah, we get obviously the guy walking out like, I'm free. And you get some kind of message about how he got fined some money because, he wouldn't agree and
yeah.
shouldn't have done that in the first place. But
And then he walks out and he's like, "Who are the real cannibals?" And it's like a big shot of like a New York '80s skyscraper. You know,
yeah, classic shots.
and then, as with all Italian horror films, it's like you've just seen, people be brutalized, go through horrendous trauma and killed in brutal ways. Play an acoustic song, baby.
It's fantastic, and it's better. It's far better than I was actually expecting this film to be.
And me,
I do think it's
I
actually
really
a really
enjoyed
good
that.
horror film.
Yeah, I thought
It's yeah, it's excellent both in story, special effects, all those kind of parts, and it doesn't have too much of that kind of fake dubbed kind of thing, so it doesn't really take too much
yeah,
distractingly away from it either. It works as a good solid film. So I
but
think video nasties is our obviously of this feature, and we've talked about them in bits throughout, but just to talk about the main kind of response that this film got and why it kind of got a banning. I mean, this was banned pretty much around the world.
yeah,
So obviously we've said about the court case, as in, Didato, the director, he was charged literally with murder because no one believed that these actors were still alive because the actors
yeah,
were on contracts that basically said you can't star in anything for a year because we want people to really believe that you're missing.
yeah. The
So
classic Blair Witch.
yeah, that classic. And because they couldn't actually track down certain film crew at the times, and obviously the actual tribal part of it, those were almost
Yeah,
impossible for some of them to get in contact with. So they start to be like, even if you didn't kill that crew, you may have killed these people.
you
So
may
we
have
need
killed that.
proof.
Yeah,
So they had to go to court in order to prove that they were real. So first they went on a TV show with the actors who were in the
yeah,
crew to be like, we're alive. We didn't murder them
yeah,
brutally. And then they had to actually prove, they had to prove either behind the scenes footage of the tribal people like having fun with the crew or something like that
yeah,
afterwards, or by literally in the middle of the court, they had to recreate some of the special effects in order to prove that
yeah,
you could do it, like the pole one. So the pole was like a bicycle seat which she could sit
yeah.
on, and then they put a fake piece of wood in that top of the wood is actually wood that's placed inside of her mouth,
Okay, yeah,
and then it's the way it's shot so that you can't actually see that she's like sitting. Because if you see, you don't actually get to see the wood up the backside of her.
No, you don't. Luckily.
Yeah. So you
Yeah.
only see it from that one angle. So you just can't see it. So they kind of place it in place like a line to hold her up while she
Yeah.
has that in her mouth.
Yeah.
But yeah, they had to literally like rebuild this thing and prove that you could do that in court in order to prove no, it's just a really good special effect.
Yeah. And it
Um,
is. It's an amazing special effect.
yeah, and it's truly madness, that that this had a film that were like that had to be, you know, they had to prove each of these shots of how could they make someone's head look so real and how could they do that. And even after they proved that innocence, and Didato got off with all of this stuff, and so they stopped it because obviously they'd taken all footage of the film, the
Yeah.
courts had taken it all in, and yet all of those parts they had to prove, and they had to prove each area and basically prove that each crew member was still alive to finally get up.
Yeah.
But even after all of that, the film still ended up being censored because the court still ruled against them on case of animal cruelty,
Yeah. Which
which
you could.
you can
Yeah.
understand
Yeah. Definitely.
why. Um, so they still were banned, pretty much around the world. Some
Yeah.
were banned because of the sexual nature of things, the rape. Some were banned because of the graphic nature, and some most because of the animal cruelty part of it.
Yeah.
So at this point in the 1980s, they bypassed cinema, so it never went to cinema in the UK.
Yeah.
But we had at the point in the 1980s, we still didn't have a ruling on video, and this is where our
Okay.
video nasties comes in,
Yeah.
because that's when they brought in that compiled list of 72 releases that we've talked about several times now.
Yeah.
And that's our video nasties list, and this was one of the top ones on there. Basically, it was prosecutable to be on this list because of the nature of their films, and this one had like a long list of why.
Yeah.
And the director, they basically said no way, so it became one of the black market, and this is one of the biggest black market. Cannibal Holocaust had such a
Yeah.
huge cult following because they were like, this is like the brutalist film of all time, which watching it, totally see it. It's got,
Yeah. Definitely.
I think this is probably the one of the worst of the ones that we've seen so far, because it has rapings, it has nudity, it has animal cruelty, it has
It's
true
got. Yeah.
death that looks like real death.
Yeah. It's
Um,
horrendous. It's real horrendous.
yeah, it's horrible. And yeah, it didn't get approval until 2001 to be released in the UK, but it still had 6 minutes cut off of it. Animal cruelty stuff, raping, all gone. And it wasn't until 2011 that they finally passed it, except they wouldn't pass some of the animal deaths, so they had to cut some of
Yeah.
those off. And that's pretty much the cut that's still made today. So I guess
Maybe that's the one I watched with
yeah,
the muskrat in.
yeah, you must
Which
have
is
watched that
weird.
version.
Yeah.
But yeah, it still continued around the world to be banned, and still is banned in several countries, including like New Zealand, which would never allow it to pass.
The production of the film was also pretty intense, from what I've kind of read. So it was kind of filmed in like in the Amazon rainforest,
Yeah,
with like quite a lot of native tribes, like we said. But there was also shots of like in Rome and New York. But there was all sorts of like mad shit that kind of happened. So the original actor, who was going to be Aaron Yates, dropped out, and the father of the actor who played Miguel, he was murdered. So he had to fly back to Bogota to attend his father's funeral, and then they had like sudden rainstorms, which always messed up the filming and kind of some of the reels as well. And then like Didato himself was apparently like really tricky to work with. So it was, I think it was Robert Kerman or something like that who played. Trying to find who he played now, but he played one of the. Who did he play? Sorry, man, I don't know why I can't find him. But Robert Kerman, who also was in Debbie Does Dallas and a bunch of like other porn films, was the guy who played Harold Monroe, who is actually the anthropologist. He clashed with Deodato loads apparently, and absolutely hated him, and kind of described that you know a lot of they got into like long drawn out arguments all the time, because Didato would always make like personal comments or just like really snide remarks. And he went on to say that he absolutely hated him and that he was really like horrid. He said that he didn't believe that Didato had a soul, and he was a sadist and particularly sadistic to people that couldn't answer back, people that were Colombian and people that were Italian but could be sent home. So apparently he was an absolute fucking
I mean, to have
nice
some of the
bloke.
stuff in this film to do it the way that he did it, and also to the way that he fought up some of these characters and the way to do it had to have come from somewhere. So I'm not
Somewhere,
really
yeah,
surprised that he might
yeah,
be a bit of a weird kind of guy, like a sadistic kind of guy.
yeah. And then obviously like the animal cruelty just absolutely like sent shockwaves through it. So the guy who played Alan Yates, said that it was a level of cruelty unknown to him, and actually thought that he was taking part in a snuff film at first because of what was going on.
Yeah.
He was originally supposed to shoot the pig, but he couldn't because he'd like travelled all the way to set with the pig, and had formed a relationship with it. So he was like, I can't shoot this thing. Um, and when he was supposed to do like a long monologue, I think, about this attack on the tribe, not by them, but trying to set up that it was the tree people who attacked them. He couldn't, he couldn't do it because he was so distraught, and he was hearing the squeals of the pig. Um, and then they objected to obviously the killing of the possum or the muskrat, and stormed off the set. A couple of staff members,
I'm
and
not
then apparently,
surprised at all.
yeah,
Like, it's
yeah,
horrific to watch. So to be there in person and be like, "Fuck, are they actually going to do that?" Like, what?
yeah,
Especially
and
when
the guy,
it has the nature of as if they just were basically like, "Go see what you can catch.
yeah, you know,
Go see what we can find, and we'll just fucking
yeah,
kill it."
exactly. And then the person who killed the muskrat, fucking, no, the person who, when they killed the turtle, some of them fucking cried and vomited off camera when the monkeys were killed. And then a lot of like the sexual content caused problems as well. Like one of the women didn't want to be topless, and when she said that during the sex scene, and when she was like, "No, I don't want to do it," Tadata apparently led her off set and just screamed at her in Italian until eventually she did it. He was also like the guy who played Alan Yates was really like upset with filming the scene of the rape, and he started suffering with fucking extreme anxiety because of it. Because of how distressed.
I mean, it is a film just full of distressing content. It is hard to watch throughout, and I don't actually know how some of them did it. To be fair play to him, because the guy who plays Alan Yates throughout seems quite sadistic and seems like he's just loving every second of it.
Yeah,
So he, some good acting going on there, though, because it's
yeah,
literally like Jesus Christ, like you seem like you're loving every second of this. Uh,
yeah,
it's it's a hard thing to heal because this is the part that does kind of like I think the film is great, but I it definitely doesn't sound like it. At the same time, it's like should you appreciate a film that has
yeah,
this level to of cruelty, both animal and human, and this level of but it's hard because it's not the first one we've heard, and especially with Italian directors, it's not the
yeah.
first we've heard about their passionate way of basically they're like you fucking do it my way or I'll make you do it my way, which in this modern world definitely is not an not an appreciated
No,
characteristic in any way. It's something that we kind of go, we probably shouldn't praise these people.
yeah, we probably shouldn't so much. It's like Bradley Cooper on his was recently like, I don't allow anybody to sit down on my sets. You know,
Oh yeah,
it's like I get, yeah, that's, I mean, maybe, yeah, there's nothing wrong with somebody going, I want to have I want to sit down. It's not quite the sadistic level of screaming at people until they do things and,
yeah.
forcing them to
It's not quite the same. Yeah, it's
simulate
not quite
rape.
the same as just murdering someone in the middle, in front of everyone, to be like, "You will follow my rule."
Yeah, basically, like we're in the middle of the Amazon. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you
Yeah,
can't go
it
home.
makes it sound a little bit like Didatu started to lose track between reality and what he was making, and being
Yeah,
like I could murder you, right? I could just
yeah,
fuck special effects. Let's just rip your head off.
yeah. He was in an apocalypse now situation where he
Yeah,
just became the jungle.
it it kind of sounds a bit like it. Like his inspiration started to come a little bit too much from like, yeah, I could do this, right? He
Yeah,
basically just took that woman off and was like, you realize I could probably just kill you right now. So
yeah,
take your top off. It's like fucking hell. Yeah, so yeah, doesn't sound too much like the director is in too much of a need of praise, but the final products, you can't change history, can't rewrite how things happened. That doesn't mean
yeah,
that the final product is still impressive and did lead the way in for many other horrors. And not just
yeah.
cannibal horrors. I think there's stuff in here, the structure, the way it's laid out, that I've seen in not just horror films, in a whole range of films that I don't think was done before this. So, you know,
No,
it led its way in for better or worse.
yeah. I think in terms of the actual film, I think it was much better than I actually expected it to be. I expected it to basically be the last 25 minutes or the last half hour or so, but actually you had like a really interesting story there. The message is it's one of those things where it's a bit like it's a bit heavy-handed at times,
Yeah,
but it's an interesting question, and having a cannibal film that's actually asking something a bit different, is a little interesting. Like you said about having this kind of found footage, um, you know, uh, segment of it is kind of really interesting, and you can see it like Blair Witch Project, and obviously a lot of other stuff following suit in terms of that. But there's also quite a few other filmmakers who were influenced by it. So you had obviously Eli Roth, who made The Green Inferno, which is another good film, but Ruggero Deodato was actually in Hostel Part Two. He plays a cannibal, which is quite an interesting
oh
little
yeah, I've
bit
seen
there.
pictures of him on set with Eli Roth.
Yeah, and when you know that he plays a cannibal, it's very clear that he's the one who is eating the Romanian fella's leg, which is always a fucking gross scene. But I've also read that people like Quentin Tarantino was a really big fan of the film. Trying to find the other names that I found. I can't find them at the moment, unfortunately. But I don't. I found Quentin Tarantino on there and was like, that's a really interesting that he kind of is a big fan of the film.
I think, yeah, I think I can see how quite a lot of filmmakers would be quite. I think for the style and the structure and the cinematography of this film, or just the special effects level of it, and not just horror, like across the board. I think there'd be some appreciation for what was into this film. I'm sure I saw something about Martin Scorsese had mentioned that this was a that he thought that this was quite like a interesting thought it was kind of film,
Yeah,
um, at some point. But yeah, it's definitely, yeah. I think it has a big cultural impact. It is seen as one of the most controversial films of all time, understandably.
understandably so. Yeah,
But I think it has some interesting and important kind of filmmaking structure, strategies, and effects that I think led the way for other films as well.
I found it. So the other filmmaker that was interested is, and this is a weird one, was Oliver Stone.
Oh yeah, yeah. All of a sudden, he's quite a controversial filmmaker anyway.
Yeah,
Not for horror, but for directing in general. Most of his films tend to get some kind of like, oh, you can't do that.
yeah,
He kind of
but it
does
was
what he wants.
yeah, yeah. But it's a very I don't know. I just found him a bit of an interesting, you know, director to have been influenced by it.
Yeah, quite a big director. Yeah. No, I think as we've said, this is a very interesting one. I mean, you could probably go on and on about the stuff. There is a lot of
Yeah,
stuff. There's like two or three different documentaries just about the making or the controversy of this film that are out there.
yeah.
And there's a whole array if you when you look online, and more stuff than we could ever fit into unless we did a whole series after series of it.
Yeah, deep dive.
There's a lot in there, but for Video Nasties, I think it's a clear why this one would make it in. Possibly one of the worst of our whole that we've done so far.
Probably, yeah.
I think I think Snuff was the other one that we said was probably one of our most brutal and violent, and this is right alongside that. I think as being
Yeah,
controversial thing, but this is a better film
definitely a
overall.
better film.
And
I
I
think this is
definitely
probably one of my
suggest,
favorite Video Nasties.
yeah, I think it is. I could definitely, I could see myself rewatching it, but parts of it are hard to rewatch, and I would definitely suggest people watch it. Although, if you have big themes in terms of animal cruelty and stuff like that, if that's going to be a real no for you that you can't take them, then I would suggest that maybe pass.
Yeah, I'd say steer clear.
Yeah, but I'd say as a film or a horror film, it's worth a watch.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's our little episode or our little dive into the Cannibal Holocaust video nasty. A little bit about the history of it, some of our thoughts on the film itself. And as always, if you've enjoyed the show, then please hit that subscribe button and leave us a lovely review. Mention something about us being eaten by cannibals, and we'll give you a shout out on the next episode. We will see you next week. Take care, bye bye, stay safe, and don't go into any unexplored jungles. See you soon, bye bye.